Charles Darwin, Ignaz Semmelweis, Mary Anning. What do these names have in common? Scientists, you may say, prominent historical figures, people who have changed our perception and understanding of science and medicine. But there is more to these names than that. These names are all figures who, in their time, faced ridicule, rejection, and humiliation to varying extents. Charles Darwin and his groundbreaking theory of evolution led to a range of comical illustrations of his head on an ape's body, with the kinship between monkey and man receiving opposition from the 19th century Christian-dominant Victorian England. Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian early pioneer of antiseptic procedures, now known as the saviour of mothers, was laughed at for introducing hand-washing into his maternity clinics. The early 19th century was still unfamiliar with germ theory, not to mention the theory that doctors avoiding washing their hands, leading to the deaths of women following childbirth, directly placed some blame onto his colleagues. Semmelweis was ridiculed and ignored until his death in an asylum in Vienna from septicemia or blood poisoning, ironically the same disease from which he aimed to protect the women in his maternity wards. Mary Anning, the self-taught British paleontologist from Dorset, found her fascinating fossilised skeleton of an ichthyosaur initially dismissed as a crocodile. As a woman and one of modest financial means, she was prohibited from joining the Geological Society of London and was largely overlooked for her significant scientific contributions. When thinking about these historical scientists and the significant challenges they faced during their careers in their time, it's worth considering the current scientific climate and the different but strong barriers we face now to developing novel scientific hypotheses. In our publish or perish environment, whereby journals follow profitable and fast-moving business models, we face the increasing problem of publication bias, in which scientists avoid publishing negative or inconclusive findings, and journal editors veer away from accepting them. This current model of scientific publication discourages risk-taking in terms of generating novel ideas or avenues of research. I now want to focus on a key issue within our current academic model, and that is the barrier placed on women in science, based on the level of risk-taking needed to generate a novel hypothesis that may be the subject of disinterest, rejection, or even ridicule. Substantial literature from economics and finance conclude that women are generally more risk-averse than men. A 2022 study on women entrepreneurs showed that, for women, perceptions of risk-taking behaviours are associated with less progress in the venturing process. However, starting a new venture in a socially supportive culture moderates that relationship. In sport, the fear of judgment in women led to the launch in 2015 of the incredibly successful This Girl Can campaign, which today partners with several organisations to develop new initiatives supporting women in sport across the UK. In the context of academia, a 2012 analysis of 5 studies demonstrated that in competitive academic institutions, women who expected and were concerned about rejection based on their gender showed a pattern of threat-fueled responses. These women engaged in self-silencing and the avoidance of opportunities for evaluation, consistent with wanting to prevent a rejection from members of the institution on whose approval they depended. How women perceive and cope with stressful situations may depend on their pre-existing level of concern and uncertainty about the role of their gender in their treatment. A 2013 study of engineering students showed that women reported significantly higher fear of failure than their male counterparts. As fear of failure relates to self-efficacy and self-esteem, these fears may impact women in their career decisions. This fear of failure begins at a young age, with a recent study from UCL showing the gender gap in fear of failure in 15-year-old adolescents. This gap was especially high among high-achieving students, that is, those more likely to enter STEM as a career. How can our society address this and free our young aspiring female scientists from the fear of failure? Our education system can, over time, make changes that will open horizons. More emphasis needs to be placed in our education system at a young age about the value of failure. Less than 15% of all drug development programs eventually lead to approval. Why should the same principle not be applied to ideas, theories, and hypotheses? Focus programs for young women in particular, which encourage thought experiments, hypothesis generation, and brainstorming, can encourage ideation in a safe space, without the fear of failing an exam. Increased education around why it can be so important to discover nothing, how null results still deserve a strong voice in the progression of science and innovation. Finally, what can we as individuals do? I hope that listening to this talk is a first step to increase awareness and spread the word amongst friends and family. Consider your vocabulary when talking to young girls. Use mantras such as "practice makes progress." Highlight that a negative result or reaction may be due to circumstance rather than ability. Value the process of learning over and above image. Let's use small steps to arm girls with the tools to face risk, ridicule, and rejection, to benefit the future of women in science.